Bible in a year, making it easier to understand.
You're standing in a massive stadium parking lot. You can actually see the gate. You can hear the roar of the crowd. You can smell the turf and the expensive hot dogs. It is right there. It is a 3-minute walk from your car to the turnstile. But because you're convinced your ticket is a fake, because you're terrified the security guards are actually giants in disguise, you decide to just walk in circles around your SUV for 40 years.
40 years, John. Most of the people who park their cars with you, they aren't even around anymore. You're standing there with their kids who were born in the back seat of that SUV, and you're staring at the same gate your parents were too scared to walk through 4 decades ago. And you realize it was only a 3-minute walk.
And we are officially rolling. Welcome to Bible in a Year, making it easier to understand. I'm John, your modern mirror guide, and I am, to put it mildly, hyped today. We have hit a massive, massive milestone, guys. It is day 50.
Day 50. We've officially been on this road trip for nearly 2 months. I'm Stephanie, and I have to say, my coffee is extra strong today because we are finally stepping out of the wilderness logs of Numbers and into the plains of Moab. John, I feel like I need to stretch. We've been wandering through those census lists and camp layouts for a long time.
Oh, I hear you. If the book of Numbers was the GPS log of the desert, Deuteronomy is the motivational speech right before the big game. Here's the deal. We are standing on a literal threshold. If you're looking at your ESV, we're in the first day of the 11th month of the 40th year.
Okay, wait. Let's set the scene for the modern seekers out there. Moses is 120 years old at this point. He knows he's not going across that river. It's actually kind of heavy when you think about it. He's like the coach who worked his whole life to get the team to the Super Bowl, but he has to watch the game from the parking lot. What do you say to a nation when you know these are your final words?
Right. It's the ultimate farewell address. Scholars actually call Deuteronomy Moses' farewell speeches. And he doesn't start with a, hey, good job, guys. He starts with a geography lesson that is, honestly, the most savage I told you so in the history of the world. Deuteronomy 1, verse 2. It says, "It is 11 days' journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea."
11 days? John, wait. Stop. I think my brain just stalled. We just spent, 36 chapters in Numbers? They've been out there for 40 years, and Moses just casually mentions that it was an 11-day hike?
11 days, Steph. We're talking about roughly 150 to 180 miles. Modern Bedouins, people who actually live that lifestyle today, can cross that distance with their livestock in under 2 weeks. It's not even a long hike. It's a long weekend for an ambitious backpacker. But for Israel, it took a literal lifetime.
That is heartbreaking. It's the irony of the detour. 11 days of distance, but 40 years of spiritual lag time. It's like when you're trying to avoid a difficult conversation, so you spend 3 hours cleaning the kitchen instead of just making the 5-minute phone call.
Exactly. The modern mirror right there. How often do we turn an 11-day growth spurt into a 40-year identity crisis because we're scared of the giants on the other side? Moses is looking at the next gen. These are the kids who grew up eating manna for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And he's saying, look, your parents had a faith problem, and it turned a vacation into a funeral march.
That transition is so key. He's not talking to the people who messed up at Kadesh Barnea. He's talking to their kids. He has to re-socialize them. They've never known a home that didn't have tent stakes and sand. He has to explain to them that they aren't meant to be wanderers. They're meant to be occupiers.
And he starts by reminding them of the infrastructure. He goes back to when he appointed the leaders in verses 9 through 18. He says, I am not able to bear you by myself. He's setting up the government 101. He tells them they need wise, understanding, and experienced men to judge fairly.
I love that he emphasizes justice so early. He tells the judges, you shall not be partial in judgment, for the judgment is God's. It's like he's telling the new generation, when you get into the land, you can't behave like the nations around you. You don't favor the guy with the biggest camel or the most gold. You protect the small, just like the great.
Because God is a righteous dad, Steph. He's obsessed with fair play. But then, and this is where the tension ramps up, Moses takes them back to the original crime scene, Kadesh Barnea.
Oh, the place where everything fell apart. I always think about Caleb and Joshua in that moment. They're like the two people in the group chat who actually read the PDF instructions, while everyone else is just sending crying emojis and spiraling.
Totally. Caleb and Joshua are posting, "We got this," and the rest of the team is starting a mutiny. Moses recounts it in verse 26, "Yet you would not go up, but rebelled against the command of the Lord your God." And then, this is the part that is so relatable but so toxic. They started grumbling in their tents. They said, "Because the Lord hates us, he has brought us out of the land of Egypt to give us into the hand of the Amorites."
That is the wildest thing I've ever heard. They've seen the Red Sea split, they've seen the fire by night, and they conclude that God hates them? John, how do you get there? How does your brain flip the script that hard?
It's the unbelief lens, Steph. When you stop looking at God's track record, you start interpreting his protection as a trap. It's like a teenager thinking their parents are oppressing them because they have a curfew. They saw the giants and forgot the God who made the giants. Moses reminds them in verse 31 that God carried them as a man carries his son.
That image, a tired toddler being carried through a rough hike, that was God's heart the whole time. But they refused to trust the Father's grip. And because they wouldn't trust the grip, they spent 38 years waiting for the last of the men of war to die off in the sand.
It's the cost of cowardice, folks. Moses is telling this new generation, you are standing where your parents stood. You can choose the 11-day faith or the 40-year fear. And that is where we have to take a break.
When we come back, we're hitting chapter 2. And John is going to explain why God actually protected the borders of nations that didn't even worship him. We're talking ancient no trespassing signs and why your cousins might be the key to your courage.
Don't go anywhere. We're just getting started with the second law.
And we are back. I just refilled my mug. If you're listening at home, I hope you've got your favorite drink too. And I've been looking over John's shoulder at his notes for chapter 2. John, you're literally vibrating with energy right now. What is it? Is it the giants? It's the giants, isn't it?
It's 100% the giants, Steph, but it's also the ancient real estate aspect. Deuteronomy 2 is basically a history of the giants documentary narrated by Moses, mixed with a legal masterclass on property rights. Okay, here's the deal. We open chapter 2, and the GPS finally recalibrates. Moses says in verse 1 that they turned back toward the Red Sea and they spent many days circling Mount Seir.
Many days. That is such a polite, biblical way of saying we were hopelessly lost and literally going in circles for decades. I feel like I do that every time I try to find a specific store in a new mall. I just keep passing the same Cinnabon over and over again.
Exactly. But then God finally speaks in verse 3, and I love this verse because it is so direct. He says, "You have circled this mountain long enough. Now turn north." Think about that for a second. That is a word for somebody listening right now. You've been circling your anxiety mountain or your past mistake mountain for long enough. God is saying, the circle is over. Turn the page. Go north.
You've circled this mountain long enough. That hits home. But John, as they start moving north, God gives them this super specific list of no-fly zones. He tells them they're going to pass through the territory of their brothers, the sons of Esau, and he says, do not contend with them. Then he says the same thing about Moab and Ammon. Why? I thought Israel was supposed to be the conquering hero here. Why is God handing out no trespassing signs for other nations?
Okay, this is the modern mirror for the day. Divine property rights. Imagine you're moving into a brand new neighborhood. You have a legal deed to Lot A, but your cousins, who you haven't talked to in years, live in Lot B and Lot C. Just because God is giving you a house doesn't mean you get to kick your cousins out of theirs just because you're the chosen one.
So you're saying God respects the deeds of nations that aren't even part of the covenant? Because Esau and the sons of Lot aren't walking around with the tabernacle. They aren't eating manna.
That's the hidden gem, Steph. God tells Israel, I will not give you any of their land because I have given it to them as a possession. This shows us that God is the sovereign landlord of the whole earth. He isn't just Israel's God. He's the God of the borders. He even tells the Israelites they have to pay for their food and water as they pass through. No looting. No, I'm with the king discounts. He's teaching them that holiness means respecting the boundaries he has set for others, even if those others don't know him.
That is so countercultural. Most ancient kings just took whatever they could reach. But John, Moses starts dropping these weird historical fun facts in the middle of these instructions. He mentions the Amim and the Zamzamim. He says they were giants, tall as the Anakim. Those names sound like something out of a Dr. Seuss book, but he says they were terrifying. Why is Moses bringing up giant history right now?
The Zamzumim in the hat. But seriously, this is Moses being a total hype man. Here's why it matters. The first generation of Israelites, the parents, refused to go into the land because they were terrified of the Anakim. They said, "We're like grasshoppers compared to them." Now Moses is pointing to their neighbors, the Edomites and Moabites, and he says, "Hey, look at your cousins. They already wiped out the giants in their land. The Moabites killed the Amim. The Edomites replaced the Horites."
Oh, it's a "if they can do it, you can too" speech.
Exactly. He's basically trolling their fear. He's saying, listen, your cousins don't even have the pillar of fire or the manna, and they already cleared out the giants. If God helped them get their land, don't you think he's going to help you take the land he actually promised to your grandfather Abraham? He's using common history to prove that their fear was a lie. He's showing them that giants aren't invincible. They're just obstacles that God has already removed for people less blessed than Israel.
That is such a psychological shift. It's moving from the giants are too big for us to, wait, even Esau beat the giants? Okay, let's go. But John, there's that sad note in verse 14. Moses mentions it took 38 years to get from Kadesh Barnea to the Zered Valley, just long enough for the men of war to die off.
38 years. Think about the silence in that camp, Steph. A 38-year funeral procession. They walked until the old mindset was buried in the sand. God was essentially waiting for the cynicism to die so the faith could be born. But as soon as that last soldier from the old guard passes, the tone shifts again. God says, "Rise up. Behold, I have given into your hand Sihon the Amorite. Begin to take possession."
Okay, I have to ask, why was Sihon fair game? We just spent 10 minutes talking about how God protects borders and respects property deeds. Why did Sihon get the eviction notice while Edom got a pass?
It's the squatter versus the owner analogy. Edom and Moab had a divine deed to their land from God. But Sihon and the Amorites? They were squatters on land that God had already signed over to Abraham 400 years prior. Their lease was up, and their hearts were hardened. Moses even tries to be peaceful. He offers to just pass through and pay for water, but Sihon refuses.
It's like a landlord who gives a tenant every chance to pay the rent or move out peacefully. But the tenant decides to barricade the door and start a fight. At that point, the eviction isn't mean, it's justice.
Boom! And Israel wins. They realize, maybe for the first time, that the giants aren't actually that big when you're walking in the will of God. They take the cities, they take the livestock, and suddenly the next gen is realizing that the stories their parents told about unbeatable enemies were just stories.
I can totally see the teenagers in the camp being like, wait, Dad was scared of that guy? We just took his whole city in an afternoon.
Right? We spent 40 years in a tent because you were scared of Sihon. It's a lesson in perspective. But we're getting to the core now, the word study that actually explains what we're doing with our lives today. We're going to take one more break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a Hebrew word that describes whether you're just living in your life or actually owning it.
Stick with us. You don't want to miss this word study. We'll be right back. And we are back. We've had our coffee, we've talked about giant-slaying cousins, and now we are hitting the home stretch of Deuteronomy chapters 1 and 2. John, you've been teasing this hidden gem all morning. This one Hebrew word that basically acts as the key to the whole book.
It is. If you are following along in your ESV, you probably noticed a word popping up over and over. It's like a blinking neon sign in the text. In Deuteronomy 1, verse 21, Moses says, "Go up, take possession, as the Lord has told you." Later in chapter 2, it's everywhere. The word in Hebrew is yarash.
Yarash. Okay, I like the sound of it. But John, take possession sounds a bit, I don't know, aggressive? Like a military takeover?
Well, that's the modern mirror we have to look through. Most English Bibles translate yarash as possess or take possession, but if you look at the NLT, it uses the word occupy. And here's the hidden gem. Yarash isn't just about the moment you grab something. It has what scholars call a progressive aspect. It means to enjoy possession of or to live out your inheritance.
So it's not just about the victory of getting the land. It's about the daily act of living in it, like actually sitting on the porch of the house God gave you.
Exactly. Think about it this way. You possess a gym membership the second you sign the contract and pay the fee. You have the card in your wallet. But occupying that membership means actually walking through the doors, lifting the weights, and letting that membership change your body. Israel possessed the land through the promise to Abraham centuries ago. But for 40 years, they refused to occupy it. They were owners who were living like homeless wanderers.
That hits so hard, John, because I think a lot of us do that with our faith. We possess the promise of peace or the promise of God's presence, but we're still wandering around the parking lot of our anxiety because we haven't actually moved into the occupancy phase. We have the ticket, but we aren't in our seats.
Boom! That's the core of the tragedy. Moses is telling this new generation, your parents had the deed, but they were too scared to move in. And this word yarash actually has a double meaning. In some contexts, it can even mean to become impoverished if you don't occupy it correctly. If you try to live in the land for your own personal benefit and ignore God's will, the land itself will eventually impoverish you because you aren't living in the flow of the covenant.
So, the goal for this next gen standing in Moab isn't just to be better soldiers than their dads. It's to be better occupiers, to actually trust that the land is theirs because God already signed the papers.
100%. And this leads us to the most beautiful connection in the whole text. Moses is a great leader, but he's not the one who can lead them into that occupancy. In Deuteronomy 1, verse 38, God says, Joshua the son of Nun, he shall go in there. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it.
Wait, John, you've told me this before. Joshua's name in Hebrew is Yeshua, right?
Yes, Yeshua, which is the same name as Jesus. Moses represents the law, and the law can show you where the land is, but the law can't give you the heart to occupy it. Only Yeshua, Joshua, can lead them across that river into the rest. It's a literal modern mirror pointing directly to Jesus. We can't occupy the life God has for us by just trying harder to follow the rules. We need our Yeshua to lead the way and fight the giants for us.
I love that. It takes the pressure off. I don't have to be a giant slayer on my own strength. I just have to follow the one who has already defeated the giants.
Exactly. You just have to be a God follower. And look at how Moses wraps up this part of the speech. In Deuteronomy 2, verse 7, he reminds them that even during the detour, God never clocked out. He says, the Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. He has been with you these 40 years, and you have had everything you needed.
That is the grace of the Old Testament right there. They were failing. They were circling. They were literally waiting for the older generation to pass away. And yet, God was still blessing the work of their hands. He didn't stop the manna just because they took the long route. He's a good dad who stays in the car with you even when you've taken a 3-hour wrong turn.
He's the dad who carries the tired toddler. But eventually, the dad says, okay, kiddo, it's time to get out of my arms and walk into the house. I've already unlocked the door.
And I've already put your toys in the playroom. John, before we go, what is the text message summary for our listeners today?
If I'm texting a friend who feels stuck today, I'm saying, God's promise is an 11-day trip. Don't let your fear turn it into a 40-year detour.
That's it. That's the whole ballgame. Stop circling your anxiety mountain. Turn north.
Wow. What a way to kick off Deuteronomy. If you're feeling like you've been walking in circles, I hope today's episode was a turn north moment for you.
We covered a lot today, from the tragedy of Kadesh Barnea to the sovereignty of God over every border, and finally, that beautiful word, Yarash. The takeaway is simple. God is a faithful provider, but he invites us to be active occupiers of the peace and the promises he's already given us.
And here is your specific action step for the day. Identify one task or one conversation you've been putting off. Maybe an 11-day task that you've turned into a 40-day detour because you're scared. Take one single step toward that giant today, just one. And remember, you aren't walking alone. Your Yeshua is walking in front of you.
and maybe buy some comfortable shoes for the journey. We are so glad you're with us on day 50. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear that God is still carrying them, even in their wilderness.
One day at a time, we're making the Bible easier to understand. We'll see you tomorrow for chapters 3 and 4.
John, do you think they had a no U-turn sign at Kadesh Barnea?
Probably. And they just ignored it and tried to presumptuously drive over the curb.
Typical.